Okay. So this video is going to be about FE and FI. Apparently I'm not quite done making videos. I just watched Michael Pierce's video about FE and FI. Who's texting me? And it inspired me in a way that I didn't think typology could inspire me anymore. But it apparently can. So I guess what I should have said in the last video is that I'm not, or I don't have any further plans to make any more videos. Not that I'm done. I thought I was. So FE and FI. Michael Pierce, who's texting me? God damn it. Wanted in that video to de-emphasize or to distance himself from the idea that FI is more primordial than TI. He kept on saying that FI and TI are both introverted rational functions. And yeah, I agree. So this is going to be kind of long-winded. Determining function axes, part 1, Celebrity Types article that you can read for free, says that, or was the beginning of function axes as they were understood, or as anyone in online thought of them. They were introducing an old idea, the old Heraclitean idea of the enantiodromia by presenting the functions as more something that works in tandem with each other, or at least something that produces an outcome that is similar, that you can recognize, whether NE, for example, is dominant, or whether SI, for example, is dominant. And it's been clear for a while to me how NE and SI are related to each other, how they necessarily kind of have to have each other, and how SE and NI necessarily have to have each other. What has not been clear to me is why FE and TI should necessarily be joined together, and why TE and FI should necessarily be joined together. Until now. So there's this Boyi Akinwande. I hope me saying that so exotically was not offensive. But he has this article on ojjt.org, and it's called Illustrating Function Axes. And it's a very good article. My two favorite articles in typology, Boyi Akinwande was involved in. I think Illustrating Function Axes is one of them, and then part 4 and 5 of Determining Function Axes is my all-time favorite article in typology. So good. But so in Illustrating Function Axes, he talks about how TI, and it's probably an idea that I could have found elsewhere, but he was the first one to make me get it. TI looks at the idea of something. It says, it peels back the skin. It says these things aren't really that different. There's a principle here that makes them the same thing at bottom, at their juiciest, most meaningful level, which is the idea of what's going on here. While TE does not do this. TE says the idea of what's going on here is subjective. This thing has objective characteristics, and those are what can be verified, and we need to focus on those. So TI is looking at things and saying, no, these really aren't. These are different only in appearance. and TEs saying appearance is what matter. They're different. They're different. So in the determining function axes part 1, they say that TIFE types will view people as mostly at bottom the same, and that TEFI types will view people as divergent, as having different, their values are not aligned, their interests are not aligned, they're not at bottom the same. And strangely, elsewhere on solar types, I can't remember where, but I remember them saying that, I think it was Aristotle. I think Aristotle's his viewing people as at bottom different led him to, and it was because of his introverted feeling that made him think that people were at bottom different, or not at bottom, but different, at differing interests. And I think that it's actually the other way around. I think it's the thinking functions that are mainly responsible for this bias of introverted, of the judging axis, of the respective judging axis. And the feeling function is what kind of like deals with this fact, and then formulates criteria by which to judge things based on a thinking assumption or a thinking process. And so my theory is that TI looks at the world and says, or looks at, it's not just people, it's that it's like, it's looking for commonalities between everything. And when it comes to people, where like values are the most concentrated and are the most relevant, it says people are at bottom the same. And then FE says, oh, people are at bottom the same. Well, then we can have I can align myself with an objective value criteria, because if people are the same, then really what they really want is going to be the same, and like their values are at bottom the same, and that's going to promote a harmonious and desirable result. Whereas the introverted feeling types, or TEFI types, look at people and they say, and they don't have TIs search for commonality, they have TEs interest in collecting all of the qualities, and they say, okay, no, people are very different. I can see this objectively. Therefore, people are not reliable sources of values. They're going to it's not a one-size-fit-all thing. I have to look within myself to determine criteria by which to judge things as good or bad. And they're all about not being corrupted by the objective value criteria. They're all about not being corrupted by society. And it's very funny to me that introverted feeling types don't like to be described as more childish, even though like ENFPs and whatnot are always saying like never lose touch with your inner child. Like you gotta preserve that kind of spontaneity and gentleness. And so that's my maybe a little glib argument for why feeling why extroverted feeling exists as a back formation to introverted thinking, and why introverted feeling exists as a back formation to extroverted thinking. Maybe there are other arguments. I don't know. But that seems to work for me. And so what do I have to explain what I mean by objective criteria, because Jung has a part in psychological types where it's like, you have an extroverted feeler, and if they're looking at a painting and it's popular to like that painting, they're gonna say, "Yeah, I like this painting," and and the introverted feelers are horrified by this, and they're like, "How dare you, you sheeple, you conformists." Conformism is the sin of to introverted feeling. But objective criteria can mean different things. I went through a phase where I was kind of a relativist. I was like, okay, there's no real reason to think that something is good or bad. It's just my subjective feeling about it. And what's good and bad is determined by societies, and societies change. Therefore, good and bad changes. Therefore, morality changes based on, society. And in a way, I still believe in this, but I don't go the same route to get to the same conclusion. I go a different route to get to a different conclusion. I think that, there's probably no objective, without God, there's no objective reason for good and bad. And I am an atheist, so I have to forego that route to get to good and bad. So I say, okay, maybe it's not good and bad. Maybe it's following what you really at bottom want. Because if everyone really at bottom wants the same thing, then if they all actually get what they want, that will be good. I think it's more like healthy people versus unhealthy people, and it's less like I've removed the subjectivity in that scenario where it's unhealthy people versus healthy people. It's like, no, they have to just find the truth. What do they actually want? Not right now, but in the long run, and that will be what's good for them. And if and it makes me sound like a little bit like an introverted feeler, I'm realizing, but societies can have objective standards of what is good, objective criteria, because everyone wants the same thing. But the introverted feeler doesn't have that. The TEFI doesn't have that inclination. So they might start the same way as I do, thinking that, a person needs to find what he really wants, and that will be good. But then they don't take the extra step of saying that, well, everyone wants the same thing, so therefore we can have objective criteria. They think, no, I can empirically see that people, just economically, people, when they make a trade, they're both better off, therefore they must have different interests. The diversity of interests is what makes them better off if they make a trade. So, obviously people are different. Obviously we don't have objective criteria of what's good and bad. You need to just kindle your own, and you need to evaluate for yourself. And so that's what... And so I have this friend who's kind of like an extreme example of this. He's an ISFP, and he thinks that, he's a solipsist. So he thinks that, he just bases everything he does on just his feelings, and this horrifies my ISFJ friend and me. He also believes in parallel universes, and he thinks if there are infinite parallel universes, then there are infinite possibilities on the one hand that something he does will work out, and something that he does won't work out on the other hand. So therefore, you can never know whether what you do is going to work out. So therefore, you just have to rely on only your feelings. There's no logical reason to do something. You have to rely just on your feelings. Just as an example of this kind of mistrust of everything. of the outside world for establishing objective criteria. He also, maybe he's not the best example because he also believes that he's like going to become a higher being and stuff. So those are my. I was going to talk about two other anecdotes about my ENFP friend whom I broke with, and my INFJ friend whom I broke with. Well, she broke with me, but I don't think they're very relevant anymore. So that's it.